Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the all merciful and all compassionate. Fatima Zahra, the daughter of the Prophet, peace be on him, is to have thus related in effect. My father, the Prophet of Allah, came to my house one day and said to me, peace be on you, Fatima. I replied, and upon you be peace. Then he said, I feel weakness in my body. I said, Allah protects you from weakness, Father. He said, Fatima, please bring the Yemeni cloak and cover me with it. So I brought the Yemeni cloak and covered him with it. Then I looked at him and saw that his face was shining like a full moon with its glorious splendor. After a while, my son came in and said, peace be on you, mother. I replied, and upon you peace, the light of my eyes and the delight of my heart. He then said, Mother, I smell a fragrance so sweet and pure as that of my grandfather, the Prophet of Allah. I replied, yes, grandfather is why I am underneath the cloak. Hassan went nearer the cloak and said, peace be on you, my grandfather, the Prophet of Allah. May I enter the cloak with you? He replied, and upon you peace, my son and the master of my fountain, you are given the permission to enter. So Hassan entered the cloak with him. After a while, my son Hussein came in and said, peace be on you, mother. I replied, and upon you the light of my eyes and the delight of my heart. He then said, Mother, I smell a sweet fragrance like that of my grandfather, Prophet of Allah. I replied, yes, your grandfather and your brother are lying underneath the cloak. Hussein stepped towards the cloak and said, peace be on you, my grandfather, the chosen of Allah. May I enter the cloak with you? He replied, and upon you peace, my son, and the intercessor of my followers, who are given the permission to enter. So Hussein entered the cloak with him. After a while, Abu Hassan, Ali bin Abi Talib, came in and said, peace be on you, O daughter of the Prophet of Allah. I replied, and upon you peace, O father of Hassan, the commander of the faithful. He then said, Fatima, I smell a sweet fragrance like that of my brother, my cousin, the Prophet of Allah. I replied, yes, he is underneath the cloak with your two sons. So Ali went near the cloak and said, peace be on you, Prophet of Allah, may I enter the cloak with you? He replied, upon you peace, my brother, my legatee and my successor, and my son and bearer, you are given the permission to enter. So Ali entered the cloak with them. Then I stepped forward and said, peace be on you, my father, the Prophet of Allah. May I enter the cloak with you? He replied, and upon you peace, my daughter, O part of my soul. You are given the permission to enter. I entered the cloak with them. Getting together underneath the cloak, my father, the Prophet of Allah, held the two ends of the cloak and raised his right hand towards the heavens and prayed, O Allah, these are the people of my household. Yellow, they are my confidence and my supporters. Their flesh is my flesh and their blood is my blood. Whoever hurts them, hurts me too. Whoever displeases them, displeased me too. I am at war with the wars at war with them. I am at peace with those at peace with them. I am the enemy of their enemies, and I am the friend of their friends. They are from me, and I am from them. O Allah, bestow your blessings, benevolence, forgiveness, and your pleasure upon me and upon them, and remove impurity from them and keep them thoroughly pure. Then the Lord Almighty Allah said, O my angels, O residents of my heavens, verily I have not created the erected sky, the stretched earth, the illuminated moon, the bright sun, the rotating planets, the flowing seas, and the sailing ships, but for the love of these five underneath. Gabriel, the trusted angel, asked, who are underneath the cloak? The Almighty Allah answered, "They are the household of the Prophet and assets of Prophet. They are Fatima, her father, her husband, and her 2 sons." Gabriel said, "Allah, may I find yours to be the 6th of them?" Allah replied, "Yes, you are given the permission." Gabriel, the trusted, minded, right named his own, and said, "Peace be on you, O Prophet of Allah. The All-Highest conveys His peace on you and His greetings and says, By my honor and glory, all my angels, residents of my heavens, verily I have not created the erupted sky, the stretched earth, the rotating moon, the bright sun, the rotating planets, the flowing seas, and the sailing ships of your sacred love. God has given me the permission to enter the cloak. May I join you, O Prophet of Allah? The Prophet replied, "And peace be on you, O trusted bearer of Allah's revelation." You are granted the permission. So Gabriel entered the cloak and said to my father, "Allah sends His revelations to you. Verily, Allah's desire is to remove blemish from you, O people of the household, and purify you with the perfect purification." Then when he said to my father, "O Prophet of Allah, tell me, what significance has Allah given for together underneath this cloak?" The Prophet replied, "I am who rightfully appointed me a prophet and chose me a messenger for the salvation of the mankind. Whenever and wherever an assembly of our followers and friends mention this event, Allah will bestow on them His blessings and mercy. Angels will encircle them, asking Allah the remission of their sins until the assembly disperses." So Ali said, "Verily, I, the Lord of the Kaaba, we and our followers are the winners." Then my father replied, "I am who rightfully appointed me a prophet and chose me a messenger for the salvation of man, and whenever and wherever an assembly of our followers and friends mention this tent, there shall remain none grieved, but Allah will remove His grief. There shall remain none distressed, but Allah will dispel His distress. There shall remain none mercy seeker, but Allah will grant His mercy." Ali happily said, "Verily, by the Lord of the Kaaba, we and our followers are the winners and the blessed in this world and the next."
MashaAllah, very good job. Yusha, salawat par Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As we're waiting for Maulana to enter, would any young ones like to read Surah? Okay, come on up. You're next there, after him. Come on.
My name is Ammar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin.
Good job. MashaAllah. Come on up.
My name is Zayn, and I'm going to read Surah Al-Kawthar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar, salli li rabbika wanhar, inna shani'aka huwal abtar.
MashaAllah, good job, Zain. Any other young ones? Okay, come last one. Hurry up. Ask. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid. This last surah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nabi ni berkata kepada penjauhan negara Allah Allah mencayai kita sebagai ya Allah وآله وسلم لنا هدنا يا علي يا علي أعطني في زمن.
Okay, Allahumma salli ala, mashallah. Good job, good job. A couple of quick announcements, please move forward as much as possible so we can have proper Majlis etiquette and leave some room for those who are arriving a little bit late. Again, please kindly put your cell phones on silent so we don't disturb the Majlis, and please kindly observe masking while in the hall. If you'd like to sponsor or contribute towards any niyaz, you can see myself, Brother Jafar, Sister Aziza or Sister Taysin. I'm happy to give you details in terms of making a contribution towards the niyaz. At this time, I can request Sayyid to take the members. Salawat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Jai Fadl.
This is firmly, very firmly. Exactly. Good job. Very good. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أنبياء الله جميعا وعلى سيدهم وخاتمهم حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ويا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة. يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا تمدن عينيك إلى ما متعنا به أزواجا منهم زهرة الحياة الدنيا لنفتنهم فيه ورزق ربك خير وأبقى. وأمر أهلك بالصلاة واصطبر عليها لا نسألك رزقا نحن نرزقهم والعاقبة للتقوى. صدق الله العلي العظيم. How do we enjoy a stress-free life? Scientific studies and surveys and researchers found that the most urgent and the most pressing and the most fundamental need and desire for every human in this life is happiness, is a stress-free life, is a stability, is peace of mind. If you take any sample anywhere in the world and interview people and ask them this question, ask the adult, ask the children, ask the rich, ask the poor, ask the Muslims, ask the non-Muslims, ask the believers, the non-believers, whatever, ask them this question: what is your supreme goal, ultimate goal in this life? Definitely 99% of the answers are going to be happiness. I want to be happy. I'm looking for my peace. I'm looking for peace in this life. I don't want any conflict, any misery, any failures, any tensions in my life. This is what the vast majority of people are looking for. And in fact, religions came for this reason. Why God sent prophets and messengers and books and religions? To make people happy, to make their life easier, to help them out achieve their goals, to enjoy stability, to enjoy peace of mind in this life. God says in the book, says to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or about the Prophet, استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم. All people respond, positively respond and answer the call of God and His apostle when they invite you to make you happy, to resurrect you, to make your life peaceful and stable. Respond to them. It's not about making people's life miserable. It's not about that. يريد الله بكم اليسر. This is in the second chapter, Surah Al-Baqarah. God intends every facility, every stability, every ease for you. يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر. He does not intend to make your life difficult for you or miserable for you. He doesn't. In another verse, God says, if you respond to me, your life is going to be a beautiful life. If not, if you reject human values, moral values, then your life is going to be miserable. وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. Ma'isha means a lifestyle. Dhanka means miserable. When you rebel against God, against the human values, against moral values, you lead a stressful life. So it's up to us. Do you want to be happy? Not only God is going to make you happy, you have to make yourself happy. God is going to help you out. God is going to support you. You have the choice. God has showed you the way and the path for it. But sometimes we overlook that path. We don't care about it. We turn against it. We rebel. So scientists, they unanimously agree that the most sought after thing in this life is happiness. Everywhere, in every society, in every country, in every family. When you ask them what is your ultimate goal, he says, I study, I go to work, I make money, I get married, all to make myself happy and happier. This is my ultimate goal. But then they disagree when it comes to how do we approach happiness? How do we achieve it? They disagree. There are different ways. Some people think or believe that happiness is only through money. Only through money. Money is the first and money is the last. Other people think that happiness is only through power. When you are in control, if you are in control, you will be the happiest. And others have different ideas. But those scientists, anthropologists, who study the nature of people in the societies, psychologists, some of them, sociologists, some of them, moralists, ethicists, ulama al-akhlaq, they found something very interesting. When they studied the nature of people and their lifestyle, and they interviewed thousands of people throughout the world, rich countries, poor countries, America, Europe, Africa, India, South America, Asia, they found something very interesting. They found that people who are happiest and more peaceful in their life are not necessarily those who are the richest or those people who have more power and more affluence or more development. In fact, they found exactly the opposite. They found that people who are the happiest, enjoying this peace of mind in this life, are people who are not necessarily the richest. And then they found that people who are the richest, more developed, stronger, they have stronger economies, stronger armies, better technologies, they are reporting more and more on negative feelings, negative experiences in their lives. Such as what? Such as worry, stress, anger, sadness, depression, anxiety. This is what they found. It's not compatible. Someone who has a house, he has a mansion, He has a luxurious car. He has good income. He has health care. He has education. But yet, that person is not happy. He's not happy. He's not content with his life. He's not happy. Let me share some figures with you. These figures, I read them in American newspapers. LA Times, New York Times, and other sources. It says, one of the figures says that 83% of the American people, 83%, this is a huge number, 83%, of the American people, they do not enjoy a peaceful sleep at night. In a way or another, they have to use some tranquilizers to put themselves to sleep. They use medicine. 83%. In the strongest economy, in the most probably stable country in the whole world, in the cradle of democracy. Another study by the CNN says that American people are the most people in the whole world that are susceptible to depression. People get easily depressed in this country. There are other countries, people have no food, no electricity, no shelter, no health care, no medication, no education, no schools, but yet they are not depressed. They are not depressed. Another survey says that almost 1 million people in this country a year, only in this country, every year they attempt to commit suicide. 1 million, it's a huge number, my friends. Not only in America. Go to the most industrial countries, most advanced countries, South Korea, strong economy, Japan, Hong Kong. Go to these countries. The rate of suicide in these countries is much higher than the rate of divorce, the rate of suicide in Africa or India or poor countries. They have the best technologies, the fastest internet. They have electricity, they have apartments, they have means of transportation, but yet, with the smallest failures in their life, they lose their faith, they lose their trust, they take away their lives, they get frustrated, they lose hope, they have money in their bank account, they lose hope. We have some cases here in this country, America. Kate Spade, I did not know her until she died. She committed suicide 2 years ago in New York in her apartment. She's worth $2.4 billion. $2.4 billion. I'm not going to judge her. I'm not judging her. I feel sorry for her. I'm not criticizing her. But $2.4 billion can buy you everything. Why it could not buy her happiness? Why? If someone is happy and content with his wife, with his life or her life, would he take out his life? Would he kill himself? He wouldn't. This is a sign of unhappiness and sadness. Now recent stories that happened during this pandemic. The richest person on earth, Jeff Bezos, divorced his wife. They could not find marital stability. They were separated. They were divorced. After him, who got divorced? Bill Gates. I'm not judging them. Some of them are excellent. Bill Gates, he does a good job. So far, he paid $40 billion for charities in America and outside in Africa. He's helping people out. I'm not judging him. I'm saying that money, strong economy, wealth, being famous, being celebrity would not necessarily buy you happiness. It could, money can if you know how to use it, and it might destroy you too. So my friends, if money does not bring you happiness, If wealth does not bring you happiness, if power does not bring you happiness, if good economy does not bring you happiness, what is it? What is it that is going to bring you happiness? What is it? Same scientists, when they continued their work, interviewing people, studying people and researching, they found, and many of them are secular, not even religious, not even Muslims, not even Christians. Many of them are atheists. Many of those psychologists, sociologists are atheists. But they argue that reason number one for happiness, they found when they studied people, that most people who are happy, they pray. They pray. They are connected to a higher spiritual power. Those people who are happy, they are not Muslims. Many of them are not Muslims. But they are connected to a higher spiritual power, to a higher divine power. They prayed their own way. So prayers earn them what? Earn them inner satisfaction, content, inner happiness. We call it in Islam qana'ah, inner happiness. Because of the prayers. And in fact, when you come to the Quran and find out and research about qana'ah, inner satisfaction, you will find we have plenty of verses that says, oh people, if you are really searching for stability, peace of mind, then you must possess qana'ah. You must have qana'ah, inner satisfaction. This is one of the verses I recited earlier in the beginning of the majlis. Chapter 20, Surah Taha, verse 131. Check it out. Check the translation tonight before you go to bed. One of the most powerful psychological verses in the Quran. If we follow this verse, you don't need to be put on medication, believe me. You don't get depressed. You don't get anxious about it. You don't get worried about your life. Read this verse. God is giving this verse as a gift to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because the name of the chapter is Taha. Taha is one of the names of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he's saying to him at the end of this chapter, وَلَا تَمُدَّنَّ عَيْنَيْكَ إِلَى مَا مَتَّعْنَا بِهِ أَزْوَاجًا مِّنْهُمْ زَهْرَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Do not strain your eyes to what we have given some people among them, some families, some individuals. We gifted them with the splendor of this lower life, Hayat al-Dunya. Do not strain your eyes. Means, what does it mean? Do not wish what others have. Be content. Don't keep looking left and right, left and right, left and right. This guy purchased a house, so I have to beat him. The other one has Tesla car, I have to have a better car. This one has a better wife, I need to have the best wife. This one has this vacation, don't do that. You would live the rest of your life in pain and suffering and misery and sadness. God says to the Prophet, don't look at left and right. Look at what God has given you. Sometimes you neglect what God has given you here. He has given you at home. You don't see it, you overlook it, you ignore it. And you wish what others have, others who live far away from you. Don't do that. وَلَا تَمُدَّنَّ عَيْنَيْكَ. Do not strain your eyes, your wishes. إِلَى مَا مَتَّعْنَا بِهِ أَزْوَاجًا مِّنْهُمْ. Some people we have given him these toys. Given them these toys. These are toys. You leave them behind. زَهْرَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا لِنَفْتِنَهُمْ فِيهِ. We give them the wealth, these toys, the splendor of this life, to test them therein. لِنَفْتِنَهُمْ فِيهِ. وَرِزْقُ رَبِّكَ. The provision of your Lord, خَيْرٌ, better and more lasting, وَأَبْقَى. And then see what God said to the Prophet immediately in 132. Please read these verses tonight, please. Chapter 20, Surah Taha, verse 131 and 132. Very easy, at the end of the chapter. Then he immediately says, I'll give you the medication. If sometimes you think you don't have, others are better than you, better off, then I'll give you the medication. Connect to me. Connect your Wi-Fi to me. وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ. Order your family to connect with me. People who take out their lives, they are not connected, believe me. If they are connected, then they can live under the most difficult circumstances and yet they are happy. The same Quran says, a family of 5, they fasted for 3 days. Every night someone comes and knocks at the door. For 3 days, ask any physician here. Can someone survive without food for 3 days? It's very difficult. Some physicians say no, you cannot. Of course they had water, but without food, especially children for 3 days, they give their food. And yet they are happy. None of them complain, none of them said, oh, this is my meal. Give it back to me, I don't want to share it. They never said that. They gave it with happiness, with satisfaction, and gave thanks to God. See? Why this happened to this family but it did not happen to other families? Why we cannot do it? Myself. Let me speak about myself. I can't. When I fast, believe me, I get knocked out 2 hours before sunset. I can't even leave my bed. Because it depends on how many bars you have in this Wi-Fi with God. If you have 1 bars, then you are weak. The connection is weak. But if you have full bars, the connection is powerful. They had full bars. Ahlul Bayt, in their connection, in their worship, in their dedication of God, they had full bars. This is why they persevered and they succeeded. Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura, he's seeing each member of his family. Every maybe 15 minutes, one of them is gone. Every 15 minutes. But yet historians all say he was standing like a lion, brave. He never even complained. All what he said, oh God, I want you to look at what is happening. If you are happy, I'm happy. All what he said. He did not collapse. Why? Because he has good relationship with God. وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا. You have to, someone told me the other day, he's sitting here, he said you have to encourage the young people to pray. My young ones, my friends, the young ones, you must maintain your 5 daily prayers. Don't disconnect with God. Because one day comes, your mother cannot help you. Your father cannot stand with you. Your friend will not be with you. The only one who's not going to turn his back against you is God. You need him. You need God. You need Him at the time of ease, at the time of comfort, at the time of adversity, when you are sick, when you are in the hospital, when you are in the desert, when you have a problem, when you are doing your test, you need God. So you have to maintain good relationship to Him. Don't be a seasonal worshipper. Whenever you have a problem, you pray 5 times a day. The problem is solved, you say ma'as-salama, goodbye to the prayers. Don't do that. This is not good. Don't be opportunist. Stay with God. Stay loyal to Him, He will be loyal to you. He will respond. Why some people keep praying, oh Allah, 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 He never even listened to them. And other people, as soon as they say, Ya Allah, He responds to them. Because the relationships are different. The first one, he's opportunist. He calls upon God, but he never had good relationship with God. His money was more important. His profession was more important. His entertainment was more important than God. So when he says, oh God, he's not genuine, God knows he's not genuine, he doesn't answer. But when you are genuine, God would welcome you. God will say, Labbayka abdi, I am here for you. I am there for you, I respond to you. So the first thing was inner satisfaction, qana'ah. And this is embedded in our book. And if you really want to enjoy stress-free life, I'm not telling you a theory, my friends. I said the other day, 90% of what I say on this number is out of my personal experience. Not vague theories, I capture them from here or there. This is personal experience. So number one, satisfaction. Inner satisfaction. Be rich inside. Connect to God. Once you connect to God, believe me, you avoid depression. Even you avoid stress. Even at the most stressful situations, you are calm, composed, unruffled, strong, confident. This is one. The second reason for people's happiness, they found in their surveys and their studies, they found that the more the society is equitable and just and fair to each other, the more people are going to be happy in their life. Happy and stable. The less oppression and injustice and inequality we have in the community, the more people are going to thrive and enjoy their life. This is again another fact in the Quran. God says this life should be based on social justice. If there is no social justice, you're going to suffer. Even if a handful of people are committing injustice, not necessarily the whole society. A handful, minority, small minority, committing oppression, injustice, aggression, the whole society is going to pay the price. وَإِذَا أَرَدْنَا أَن نُهْلِكَ قَرْيَةً أَمَرْنَا مُتْرَ فِيهَا فَفَسَقُوا فِيهَا فَحَقَّ عَلَيْهَا الْقَوْلُ فَدَمَّرْنَاهَا تَدْمِيرًا. If a time comes for a civilization, for a community, for a country, for economy to be destroyed because of their aggressions, not because of us, but because what they did, then the few of them who lead the life of arrogance, luxurious, arrogant life, فَفَسَقُوا بِهَا, they commit iniquities in that society. America, I said the other day, most people are good. Most people. There is a small minority who are arrogant, who have discrimination. They commit injustice every single day. Every single day. They are biased. They are racist. They are inhumane. They are un-American. They betray the values of their country and their constitution. The whole country pays the price, my friends. The whole society pays the price. Therefore, when it comes to justice, there are two parts for justice. One is the individual justice. The second is the communal or societal justice. Both are important. The individual justice, my friends, means that you have to be fair and just to yourself before becoming fair and just to others. Be fair to yourself. Don't abuse yourself. Don't mistreat yourself. How does that happen? Can someone mistreat himself? Yes. Yes. Someone was studying in the seminary for 20 years. When he was about to graduate and go back to his country, he went to his mentor, a professor, a sage, a wise person. He said to him, "What do you advise me? I've been in this seminary for 20 years. Now it's time for me to go back and serve my community. What is your advice for me?" He gave him one sentence. Just one sentence, one line. He didn't give him a lecture. He said, "Be kind to the closest one to you." He said, "Who's the closest one to you?" "To me." He said, "Yourself, your soul, your nafs. Your nafs is the closest thing to you. Be kind to it. Don't mistreat it. Don't abuse it. Don't practice injustice against your own self." How do we practice injustice? When we commit a sin. When we break the law, the moral law. When you break any moral law, you are committing injustice against yourself. Before you are hurting others, you are hurting yourself. Someone who's dishonest, someone who's a liar, he's not hurting people. If he's wise, if he opens his eyes, he would realize that he's hurting himself. He is devaluating his own self. Inside him, he feels he's cheap. Inside him. Before he hurts others, he's going to hurt himself, his reputation. His soul is going to be damaged. Any act of sin, my friends, any act of sin we commit, we're going to damage some part of our soul. Now we have people in the hospitals, they lost 80% of their lung because of this disease. 80%, 30%. It's gone, beyond repair. Beyond repair. And there are some people who are damaging not just the lung or the heart, the soul, the nafs. The nafs. Beyond repair. Don't do that to yourself. Someone who's dishonest, he thinks that he's cheating, he's being smart. Listen, I lied to this and I made money, I lied to that person, I did this, I did that, I betrayed this, and look at me, I purchased this house, this money, this. But he is, in fact, he's hurting yourself, he's damaging himself. Himself first. Himself. قَالَ رَبَّنَا, this is the Quran. قَالَ رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا. Adam and Eve, when they approached the tree, they said, we hurt ourselves. We disrespected ourselves. We depreciated ourselves. ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا فَاغْفِرْ لَنَا. When it comes to speaking the truth, nothing is more valuable. Nothing is more honorable than speaking the truth. Teach your children. Speaking the truth is key for every virtue. And lies, telling lies, are also key for every terrible immoral act. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, remember this hadith. لا يذوق أحدكم حلاوة الإيمان حتى يؤثر الصدق حيث يضره على الكذب حيث ينفع. And no one can say this sentence but Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, because he practices what he preaches. He says no one shall taste the sweetness of Iman. Iman has a sweetness. Those who are infected with COVID-19, ask them, what is your first experience? Most of them, they lost what? The smell and the taste. They eat, mashallah, good Pakistani food, beautiful spices, but they don't taste it. They don't feel the taste. Why? Because they lost the sense of taste. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, Iman has a special taste. Some people, they practice, they do their namaz, they do their fasting, they do their worshipping, but they are not enjoying it. They are not enjoying it. It's mechanical, something they used to do it every day, so let's do it now. They are not enjoying it. Some people, they recite the dua, they don't enjoy it. While others, they really enjoy it. When they wake up for the Fajr prayers, they love it. They love it. You know, my friends, we have to worship God with a free spirit, not out of fear. I said to the youth yesterday outside in the tent, don't teach your children to fear God. Teach your children to revere God. There is a difference between reverence and fear. Reverence means you respect God, you love God. You are in love with Him. This is why you worship Him, not because you fear Him. Even if He doesn't punish you, you still worship Him, because you want to get closer to Him. Imam Ali says others are worshipping God for the fear of punishment. For the fear of punishment. For the fear of hellfire. Not because they are in love with God. That type is the worshipping of the slaves. The slaves. Be free, so you can enjoy the sweetness of ibadah. Imam Ali says the first prerequisite to enjoy the sweetness is you give a preference to truth, telling the truth, even if the truth is going to hurt you. You are going to an interview, job interview, interviewing you, asking you 20, 30 questions. Speak the truth. Don't lie. Don't say, if I say the truth, they are not going to give me the job. Doesn't matter. You can get a job another place, but don't hurt yourself. Don't damage your soul. Don't damage this inner system that you have. Keep it safe. Keep it healthy. God can find you job elsewhere. Don't do something at the expense of your inner soul. Don't do that. Speak the truth. He says that person who gives a preference to the truth where the truth is going to hurt him above the lies where the lies are going to benefit him. But still he says, I'm going to say the truth. This is the tradition of Muhammad wa al-Muhammad. They never misled anyone. They never lied to anyone. They always spoke the truth. This is why they are successful. Why they are successful? Because after 1400 years you are sitting here celebrating them, commemorating them. Where are their enemies? Nobody remembers them. Unless with cursing them. So the second, my friends, is individual justice. Do justice to yourself. Do not devalue yourself. Keep yourself dignified always. When you are dignified, you enjoy living. You become content. You become happy. You don't get depressed. You don't get sad. You know, some of the pilots who were bombing some sites, when they came back after destroying and killing women, children, innocent, bazaars, mosques, hospitals, their superiors were giving them accolades, praising them, prizes, mashallah, saying mashallah to them, good job. But then they say, we inside us, we were burning, we were suffering, because we know what we did. We know we destroyed people's life. So inside me I was burning, though my superior, my boss was saying, ahsan, good job. But I knew inside that it is not a good job, it's a bad job. God says there is a system inside you. Every person has this system installed inside him or her. That system is called an-nafsul lawwama, the reproaching soul. La uqsimu biyawm al-qiyamati wa la uqsimu bin-nafs al-lawwama. When you do something bad, this nafs is going to approach you. The first one that you face, before you face the judge, the court, the cops, this soul comes to you. Says, Mustafa, this was wrong. The sentence you spoke, the gesture you had, the movement, this was wrong. Why did you do that? Nafsul lawwama. It's a good device, reproaching soul. Teaches us, disciplines us. So when we do bad, even if the whole people are saying this is good, this system inside says, no, this is not good. This is immoral act. I disagree with it. You have to correct yourself. So that is the individual justice. Be just to yourself. The second is the communal. If we want our society to be strong and healthy and happy, we have to promote social justice. Social justice is the core message of Islam. God said, I sent prophets, books, messages to people so they can stand for social justice. Don't say, well, as long as my business is good, my salary is good, my income is good, my house is safe, my kids, they have schooling, they have healthcare. I don't care what happens to African American, to black, to red, to Chinese, to Arabs, I don't care about that, no. This morning I saw a scene on television that disturbed me until now and maybe until many days to come. The scene from Kabul when the US Air Force were taking off and people were falling down. Why in a Muslim country? Where are Muslims? Muslims who pray 5 times a day, back and forth to the mosque, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Why should they reach this stage that people become so desperate? So desperate. They know this is dangerous. Clinging to an airplane is very dangerous. But he says staying in Kabul under Taliban is more dangerous. I lose my dignity. I don't blame them. Some people blame them. I don't blame them. They did it out of desperation. Maybe if you were there, you would do the same. And the whole world is silent. 20 years. America is there. America has been there for 20 years. Where is democracy? Where is the human rights? Why people are silent? This is why when justice is missing, even if it is missing in one corner, one part of the society, one part of the world, the whole people are going to suffer. And God is not going to remain silent, believe me. Some people have to pay the price for this. I'm not speaking politics, no. This is spiritual. When a tragedy like this happens, and people are being just spectators, onlookers, they just watch, they do nothing, God says there is punishment there, awaiting those, the aggressors. When we defend people, we have to look at human rights, don't look at politics. We, the Shia, we made a mistake for the last 10 years. We saw the suffering of the people of Syria, but because of dirty politics, we did not support the Syrians. We didn't. The vast majority of us did not. We remained silent. Why? Because of the dirty politics. God says when a human is suffering, don't look at his faith or his color or his identity, whether he's related to you or he's not. He's a human. من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. If a person dies with no reason, if a single soul perishes with no reason, then this is an assault against the whole mankind, the entire humanity. We should support the oppressed, whether they are related to us or not, whether they share the faith, the madhab, the school of thought or not. They are humans, we have to support them. Imam Ali alayhi salam tells me, when there is someone being oppressed, don't ask him about his identity, don't ask him about his belief, don't ask him about which camp he belongs to. Go and support him, rush to support him. But we didn't, we failed. We failed. The result, do you want me to tell you the result? Waves after waves of pandemic. Waves after waves. I'm not going to say more than that. Those of you who are intelligent, they get it. Waves after waves after waves of pandemic. This is the price we pay. Same thing with Yemen. Same thing with other countries. Same thing with the African American in this country. They've been neglected. They've been marginalized. They've been forgotten. What did we do for them? What did we do? Just complaining about the white supremacy? What did I do? What my Islamic center, my family, my community did for them? Let's ask ourselves. Let's be frank. God says you are responsible. You lived in a country from this period to this period for 60 years, 8 years. What did you do? Did you do anything to save people's dignity? Did you do anything to promote human lives, human rights? To alleviate the suffering of the people? Did you do anything? What is the answer? I don't know. You have to prepare that answer. When we come to the Majlis of Imam Hussein, we have to have answers ready for these questions. Because Hussein stood for human rights. This is why in the camp of Hussein you have the black, you have someone from the Romans, you have Arab, you have Persians, you have all nationalities, you have all genders, you have the rich, you have the poor, you have someone who's 95, and you have his son who's only 6 months old. That is the camp of Imam Hussein. And tonight belongs to Qasim alayhi salam. How old was he, Qasim? Do you know? Either 13 or 14. When his father Imam Hassan died, by poison of Muawiyah, Qasim was maybe 3 years old or 4 years old. On the day of Ashura, he's either 13 or 14. He did not even reach the age of puberty. Imam asks him, Bunayya Qasim, my sweet son Qasim, what do you feel about the war tomorrow? Are you worried? Are you afraid? He says, no, my uncle, no. I love you and I'm going to fight. And believe me, this fight in your support to defend you, which is defending Islam, defending the truth, defending justice, is sweeter than honey. For me, is sweeter than honey. He's only 13. Can you imagine? He says it's sweeter than honey for me. This is how Imam Hussein raised his family. They stood up to justice, to the truth. This is why they are victorious. Otherwise, Qasim is only 13. Why should we keep remembering him for 1400 years? Every year in Muharram we remember him because of his stand, because of his contribution, because what he gave us, because the lessons he left behind, the legacy he left behind. It was difficult for Imam Hussein to allow Qasim to go to the battlefield. He kept coming, asking the Imam. Every time Imam says, no Qasim, no, you are wadi'atu akhi al-Hasan. My brother Hassan trusted you with me, so I'm not going to leave you to go. Until he came last time, he showed Imam a paper, a small letter, in the handwriting of Imam Hassan. You know what Imam Hassan says to his son Qasim? He says, بني قاسم إذا اشتدت عليك الأمور فعليك بنصرة عمك الحسين. Oh my sweetie Qasim, if you face distressful situation one day, then you must stand with your uncle Hussein. So he showed the letter. He said, Uncle Hussein, this is the handwriting of my father. He wants me to be with you. He wants me to support you, to stand with you. At that time, Imam Hussein embraced Qasim. He was kissing him, cuddling him. His tears came down. Qasim took off the sword. He went into the battlefield. He was wearing sandals, pair of sandals while he was fighting. Sandals snapped. So he bent down, he knelt down to fix his sandal. An enemy combatant assaulted him, dealt him a blow on his head. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Qasim, he fell face down. فَمَنْ جَنَتِ الْغُبْرَةِ. When the dust settled, people saw Imam Hussein standing next to his head. He's saying to him, بُنَيَّ قَاسِمْ يَعُزُّ عَلَىٰ عَمِّكَ أَن تَدْعُوَهُ فَلَا يُجِيبُكَ. It's very difficult for me to see my sweetheart Qasim on the ground, bleeding, breathing his last. But Qasim, you will meet your father Hassan soon, and your grandfather Amir al-Mu'mineen, and your great-grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then Imam Hussein carried the body of Qasim. Historians say Qasim was not big. He was only 13 years old. But his legs were dragging on the ground. You know why? Because Imam Hussein's back, he could not straighten his back. He was bending because of this suffering until he brought him. He puts him in the makeshift mortuary. The mother of Qasim rushes to him immediately. She sits next to his head. She says, Qasim, I had high hope. I wanted you to walk in my procession, in my janazah. I wanted you, Qasim, to bury me with your hand. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wa saya'lam alladhina zalamu ayya munqalabin yanqalibun. والعاقبة للمتقين. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات. إنك مجيب الدعوات، إنك غافر الخطيئات، إنك ماحي السيئات وجاعلها حسنات، إنك على كل شيء قدير. وعجل اللهم في فرج سيدنا وقائدنا ومولانا صاحب العصر والزمان، وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والشهداء ثواب الفاتحة مع الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
Hussein, 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 Hussein.
کیا کیا ستم حسین کے دل پر گزر گئے، کیا کیا ستم حسین کے دل پر گزر گئے، کیا کیا ستم حسین کے دل پر گزر گئے، اکبر گزر گئے، علی اصغر گزر گئے، کیا کیا ستم گزر گئے، مشکل تھی راہ حق میں ہر ایک منزل وفا، مشکل تھی ہے حق میں ہر ایک منزل وفا، لے کر علی کا نام بہتر گزر گئے، کیا کیا ستم حسین جب یاد آ گئی کبھی زینب کو کربلا، جب یاد آ گئی کبھی زینب، کیا کیا نظر کے سامنے منظر گزر گئے، کیا کیا ستم دیکھا کہ یہ ہزاروں تماشا ہی راہ میں، دیکھا کہ یہ ہزاروں تماشا سر کو جھکائے آل پیمبر گزر گئے، کیا کیا ستم گھوڑے نے آ کے در پہ صدا دی یہ عصر کو، گھوڑے نے آ کے در پہ صدا دی یہ عصر کو، زہرا کے لال صبت پیمبر گزر گئے، کیا کیا ستم
Inshallah, we'll have Salat right now. So please get ready for Salat. And then after Salat will be the Urdu Majlis, inshallah. For those who would like to sponsor any niyaz, see myself, Brother Jafar, Sister Aziza, or Sister Taysin.